She did not call for a ride. She did not know the man behind the wheel. She should not have been standing in a parking lot at this hour. 2:14 inches the morning. Rainer Fulfillment Center, Outer Houston. Halogen lights on wet asphalt. A child's car seat buckled into the back of a silver sedan that would not start. And Danielle, 31 years old, standing at the curb in a work uniform she no longer had a reason to wear. James Okoro, 44, sat in a black SUV 20 feet away. He was not there to pick anyone up. He was not there for any reason he could explain to a stranger. On Danielle's phone, a message she had not yet opened. Automated. No name, no number, no signature. The company had terminated her while she was still inside the building. She did not know that the man sitting in that SUV owned the company that had just sent her that message. He did not know it either. Not yet. Before we continue, if you are watching this at 2 inches the morning right now, tell me in the comments. And if these stories find you at the right time, subscribe. You will want to be here for what comes next. James had been sitting in the parking lot for 47 minutes before Danielle walked out of the building. He had driven here the way he always drove when sleep refused him. No destination, no route. Just the weight of his hands on the wheel and the hum of the engine and the particular comfort of being enclosed in a moving vehicle at an hour when the rest of the world was horizontal. He had left the house at 1:08 inches the morning. The house was not a house. It was a residence. 6 bedrooms, a view of the Houston skyline from the 3rd-floor terrace, a kitchen with countertops that cost more than most people's cars. He had lived there for 3 years, and he still could not sleep in it. Not because the bed was wrong, because the silence was wrong. It was the silence of a space that had been engineered for comfort, and comfort, when it arrives without effort, produces a kind of quiet that James had never learned to trust. When he was a boy in Lagos, the silence meant something was about to happen. A knock, a shout, a landlord at the door. Silence was not rest. It was the pause before the next problem announced itself. His body still operated on that schedule. So he drove. He had been doing it since he was 19 years old and bought his first car with money he made selling refurbished phones at a market in Ikeja. When the thoughts got loud, the car got quiet. When the house felt too large, the car felt right. He stopped at the Rainer lot because of the lights. The halogen lamps mounted on poles along the perimeter of the parking area cast a specific shade of orange-white light that reminded him of the street lamp outside the house his mother rented in Surulere when he was 6. He did not think about this consciously. The body remembers what it needs. It finds the light that feels like home even when home is 30 years and 6,000 miles behind you. He was sitting with the engine off and his seat reclined 2 inches when the side door of the warehouse opened and a woman stepped out. She was wearing a gray uniform shirt with the company logo on the chest. Her hair was pulled back. She walked the way a person walks at the end of a shift that has taken more from them than it gave. Not slow, not fast. The pace of someone conserving what little fuel remained for the drive home. She got into a silver sedan 4 rows from where he was parked. He heard the ignition turn, then turn again, then a 3rd time. The engine did not catch. The starter clicked and gave nothing back. She sat there, both hands on the wheel. She did not hit the dashboard. She did not get out. She sat in the particular stillness of a person calculating how many problems they can absorb before the next one becomes the one that breaks the count. James watched her through the windshield. He did not open his door immediately. There is a distance a man can stand from a woman at 2 in the morning that communicates safety. James knew that distance. He had learned it not from a book, not from a seminar, from watching his mother navigate Lagos at night, from watching the way she positioned herself at bus stops and taxi ranks and the doorways of buildings where men gathered after dark. Safety is a language spoken in feet and inches, and James had been fluent in it since before he understood why it was necessary. He stepped out of the SUV. He walked to within 10 feet of her car and stopped. He did not approach the window. He stood where the halogen light fell on him fully, where she could see his face and his hands and the fact that his hands were empty. "I have jumper cables, or I can call a tow. Whatever you need." She looked at him through the window. She did not roll it down. She held her keys between her fingers, the way women hold keys when the situation has not yet declared itself safe, the metal points facing outward. A habit so automatic it does not require thought. A habit taught by the world to every woman who has ever been alone in a parking lot after midnight. No thank you. I am fine. She was not fine. They both knew it. But the sentence was not a statement of fact. It was a boundary, a line drawn at the edge of the car window that meant I do not know you, and I do not owe you access to my situation. James did not step closer. He did not repeat the offer. He said the only thing that would matter. I can call someone for you, or I can wait here until someone comes. Either way, I am not leaving you in this parking lot. He said it, and then he stepped back. 2 feet farther from the car. Not closer. Farther. The particular geometry of a man who understood that trust is not offered. It is earned by the direction you move. Danielle looked at him for a long time. Then she rolled the window down 3 inches. Not all the way. 3 inches. The distance between refusal and permission. The distance between a woman alone and a woman deciding. The phone she pulled from her pocket was not to call a tow truck. She called the woman who was watching her children. The phone rang 4 times before a voice answered, thick with sleep. The voice of someone who had been woken up but was not surprised by it, because being woken up at this hour was part of the arrangement, part of the unspoken contract between a mother who worked nights and a neighbor who had decided that helping was not optional. Danielle spoke quietly. I am going to be late. The car will not start. The kids are okay? Okay. Okay. Thank you. She said thank you the way she said it every night, not as gratitude, as currency. The only payment she could offer for a service that had no price because the woman providing it had refused to set one. The phone call lasted 41 seconds. In those 41 seconds, a door opened between the parking lot where Danielle sat and the apartment where her children were sleeping, and through that door came the shape of her life. Not all at once, in pieces. The way a photograph develops in a darkroom. First the outline, then the shadow, then the detail that makes you look away. Danielle woke at 5:50 every morning, not by alarm. Her body had stopped requiring one 2 years ago, around the same time it stopped requiring a full night of sleep. She woke because the schedule demanded it, and the schedule was not a suggestion. It was architecture, the frame that held everything upright. By 6:15 she had dressed both children, Jalen, 5, and Mira, 3. Jalen could dress himself if you laid the clothes out in order on the bed. Shirt first, then pants, then socks. He had learned the sequence, the way children learn sequences when the adult in their life does not have time to repeat instructions. Mira needed help. Mira needed everything. 3 years old is the age when a child requires the full attention of a person who has no full attention left to give. By 6:45, she walked them next door to Gloria's apartment. Gloria was 71. She had raised 4 children of her own and buried one. She watched Danielle's kids every day from 6:45 inches the morning until Danielle returned from her first shift at 3:30 inches the afternoon, and then again from 10 at night until Danielle came home after the second shift sometime around 2:30 inches the morning. Gloria did not charge for this. Not because she did not need money. Because she understood that charging Danielle would be the same as telling her the service was unavailable. The math would not work. Childcare in Houston cost $1,200 a month for 2 children at the cheapest licensed facility within driving distance. Danielle earned $1,800 a month from both jobs combined. $1,200 from $1,800 leaves $600. Rent was $750. She did not call it exhaustion. Exhaustion implies there was a point before it, a state of not being exhausted that a person could remember and long for. Danielle could not remember that state. The tiredness was not a condition. It was architecture. Her life was built on it the way a building is built on a foundation. Remove it, and the structure does not improve. It collapses. She slept 4 hours a day, not 4 continuous hours. 2 segments. The first from approximately 3:15 to 5:50 inches the morning, after the drive home from the night shift and before the children woke. The second was 20 minutes in her car during the gap between the morning job and the afternoon pickup, parked in the lot of a strip mall, with the seat reclined and the windows cracked and an alarm set on her phone because 21 minutes of sleep was a luxury she could not afford. Marcus had been dead for 14 months. Her husband, a veteran, Army. 2 deployments. He came home intact. That was the word everyone used. Intact. As if the opposite of broken was a word that could be applied to a human body the way it is applied to a package that arrives undamaged. He was intact. He was home. He was present at the breakfast table, and present at bedtime, and present in all the ways that a man is supposed to be present when he returns from war and resumes the life he paused. But his heart was not intact. The doctors found it 18 months after his discharge. Cardiomyopathy. The muscle wall of the left ventricle thickening in a way that restricted blood flow. It could have been genetic. It could have been the burn pits. The military said there was insufficient evidence to establish a service connection. The VA said the same thing in longer sentences, spread across 7 denial letters over the course of 2 years. Marcus needed surgery. The civilian insurance from his warehouse job classified it as elective. The VA classified his case as pending review. He was alive and pending and waiting for a system that moved at the speed of paperwork, while his heart moved at the speed of biology. He died on a Sunday afternoon. The children were napping. Marcus was on the sofa watching a game. His heart stopped between the second and third quarter. He was 34 years old. The VA claim was still pending. It is still pending now, 14 months later, addressed to a man who no longer has a mailing address. Danielle had optimized her grief the way she optimized her schedule. She compressed it into a shape that fit between 2 shifts and a bedtime and a morning routine and a drive to work and a drive home and a phone call to Gloria and a 20-minute nap in a parking lot. Grief, when you cannot afford to feel it in full, does not disappear. It gets rescheduled. It waits in the body like a bill you have not opened because opening it would make it real, and you are not ready for real. You are ready for Tuesday. You are ready for the next shift. You are ready for whatever the next hour requires. Real will have to wait. James sat in his SUV and watched Danielle end the phone call. She placed the phone on the dashboard. She rested both hands on the steering wheel of a car that would not move. She sat like that for 8 seconds. He counted, not because he was timing her, because his body was measuring the weight of those 8 seconds, the way his body measured things it recognized. He had seen this before, not this exact scene. This exact stillness, on his mother's face when the landlord raised the rent, on the faces of women at the bus stop in Mushin at 5 in the morning, heading to jobs that paid just enough to not be enough, the stillness of a person who has absorbed the hit and is now waiting for the math to reconfigure itself into something survivable. Danielle opened her phone. The screen lit her face in the blue-white glow that is the only light source at 2 in the morning in a parking lot in outer Houston. She had one unread message. She opened it. The message was from the company, not from a person at the company, from the company itself. An automated system, no name in the sender field, no phone number, no signature. 6 lines of text generated by software that had been programmed to count the number of times an employee's badge was scanned after the start of a shift, compare that number against a threshold, and when the threshold was reached, generate a termination notice and send it to the employee's phone. Your employment with Rainer Distribution has been terminated effective immediately due to attendance policy violation. Please return your badge and uniform to your site manager within 48 hours. This decision is final and not subject to appeal. Danielle read it. She read it again. She set the phone face down on her thigh. She did not cry. She did not raise her voice. She did not hit the steering wheel, or close her eyes, or do any of the things a person might do when the last standing wall in a structure that was already leaning finally gives way. She sat the way a person sits when they have received a diagnosis they already suspected, not with shock, with the particular flatness of someone who has run out of room to be surprised. The face does not collapse, it levels. It becomes the surface of water after a stone has sunk to the bottom and the ripples have gone, and what remains is not calm. It is finished. James saw it, not the message, the shift. The way her shoulders dropped 2 inches and then reset. The way her jaw tightened and then released. He had seen that sequence before. On his mother's face, 20 years ago, in a taxi in Lagos, when a passenger refused to pay, and his mother did not argue because the cost of arguing was more than the fare, and she had already done the math. He did not ask what happened. He did not lean forward. He sat in his car and waited. Waiting, when done correctly, is not passive. It is the active decision to remain present without imposing presence. James had learned this from his mother. From the nights in the back seat of her taxi when she drove in silence, and he pretended to sleep, and the silence between them was not empty. It was full. It was the fullest room he had ever been in. Danielle spoke. Not to James. Not to anyone. She spoke the way a person speaks when the words are leaving the body whether or not there is someone to receive them. They fired me by text. The sentence landed in the parking lot like something dropped from a height. At 2 a.m, while I was still inside the building, she looked down at the phone on her thigh. The screen had gone dark. The message was still there. It would still be there in the morning when she checked again, and the morning after that, and every morning until she deleted it or until the phone itself stopped working, whichever came first. She was still wearing the uniform, the gray shirt with the logo on the chest. The company's name printed over her left breast in small white letters. She was sitting in the company's parking lot, under the company's halogen lights, in a car that would not start because the battery had died during the company's shift, wearing the company's clothes, and the company had just informed her by automated message that she no longer existed in its system. The system had not asked why she was late. It had not asked about the car that broke down on the 14th. It had not asked about the morning Gloria's knee gave out and Danielle had to find someone else to watch the children, and the someone else lived 20 minutes in the wrong direction. It had not asked about Marcus. It had not asked about anything. It had counted. 5 tardies in 30 days. Threshold reached. Message sent. File closed. A system does not ask why you are late. It asks how many times. James opened his car door. He did not walk to her window this time. He walked to the front of her car and stood where she could see him. He did not speak. He stood in the light, hands at his sides, the posture of a man who had decided that the next move belonged to her, and he would wait as long as it took for her to make it. She got out of the car. She stood on the asphalt with the door still open behind her, the dome light casting a weak yellow glow across the back seat where the car seat sat empty. She looked at him the way you look at someone when you have nothing left to lose by looking, when the pretense of being fine has become more exhausting than the truth, and the truth is standing in your throat, waiting for permission. My car is dead. I just lost my job. My kids are asleep at my neighbor's house, and I have no way to get home. She said it without asking for help. She said it the way a person reads a list, a factual account of the current situation, delivered in the flat tone of someone who has moved past the emotional register and into the operational one. These are the facts. This is where I am. The next step has not presented itself. James nodded once. I will drive you home. Danielle did not answer immediately. She stood in the space between the open car door and the parking lot, and she looked at the SUV, and she looked at James, and she made the calculation that every woman makes at 2 a.m. when a stranger offers a ride. The calculation is not about trust. It is about options. When the options narrow to 1, the calculation becomes simple, not safe, necessary. She got in the back seat, not the front, the back. She sat behind the driver's side, directly behind James, where she could see his hands on the wheel and the road ahead and the locks on the doors. She placed her bag on her lap. Inside the bag was her phone, her wallet, her badge that she now had 48 hours to return, and a set of keys to a car that would not start. Beside her on the seat was the car seat she had moved from her own car. She carried it with her because she could not afford a second one, and the one she had was the one Jalen and Mira used, and it went where the children might need to go. Even now, even in the back of a stranger's car at 2 a.m. with no job and no plan, she had carried the car seat. The car seat was not luggage. It was evidence of children waiting. James adjusted the rear-view mirror. He angled it 2 degrees to the left so that it no longer framed her face directly. A small movement, a deliberate one. The geometry of not watching someone who is sitting in your car trying to hold themselves together. He had learned this too, from the taxi, from the back seat. From all those nights watching his mother adjust the mirror when the passenger in back was crying and did not want to be seen. She began to talk, not because she trusted him, because it was 20 inches the morning, and she was sitting in the back seat of a stranger's car with a car seat beside her and a termination notice on her phone, and 2 children asleep on a sofa that did not belong to them. And sometimes at that hour, in that configuration, The walls a person has built around their story become too expensive to maintain. She did not tell it in order. She told it the way a tired person tells a story, in fragments, in the pieces that surface first, which are not always the most important pieces but are always the sharpest ones, the ones that cut when they come up. Marcus, the way he laughed, the way he could not laugh anymore after the second deployment, the paperwork. God, the paperwork. 7 times she filed, 7 times denied. The VA letter that arrived 2 weeks after the funeral, addressed to Marcus, thanking him for his patience and informing him his case had been escalated to the next level of review. She told James about the childcare. She did not use the word crisis. She used numbers. $1,200 a month for 2 kids. That is the cheapest one within 30 minutes. I make $1,800. You do the math. She did not say she could not afford it. She gave him the numbers and let the arithmetic do the work. Numbers do not ask for sympathy. They sit in the air, and they mean what they mean, and the person hearing them either understands or does not. She told him about the attendance system. 3 tardies in 30 days triggers a written warning. The warning is automated. 5 tardies triggers termination. Also automated. No manager reviews it. No human being calls you. The software counts, and the software decides, and the software sends a message to your phone at 2:14 inches the morning, while you are still mopping the floor of the building it just fired you from. I was late because my car broke down. I was late because Gloria had a doctor's appointment, and I had to wait for her daughter to come over. I was late because Mira had a fever, and the clinic does not open until 8, and I cannot leave a 3-year-old with a fever alone, and I cannot bring her to work, and I cannot call in because calling in also counts against the threshold. The system does not ask why you are late. It asks how many times. James listened. He drove at the speed of someone who is not in a hurry to arrive. His hands were steady on the wheel, his eyes were on the road, but inside him, something was rearranging itself. Not sympathy. He had spent 20 years in boardrooms where sympathy was performed as a prelude to inaction. This was not that. This was recognition. He was hearing his mother's voice, not the words, the rhythm, the cadence of a woman explaining a situation she did not create to a world that was not listening. The particular music of survival narrated by the person surviving it. He knew that music. He had fallen asleep to it in the back of a taxi in Lagos for 6 years. He looked at the rear-view mirror, not at Danielle, at the car seat beside her. Gray fabric, plastic frame, a small stain on the headrest where a child's mouth had rested during sleep. He looked at it, and he was 6 years old again. In the back of his mother's taxi, wrapped in a blanket, pretending to sleep. The car seat. The back seat. The woman talking to a stranger because the night had run out of other options. He had been here before. Not in this car. Not in this city. Not at this age. But here. In this exact geometry. A child in the back. A mother at the wheel. The dark outside and the engine running and the particular intimacy of a vehicle at night when the person driving and the person riding are both carrying something they have not shown anyone else. He did not say, "I understand." He did not say, "I have been there." He adjusted the mirror another degree to the left, and he drove, and the distance between the parking lot and Danielle's apartment was 11 miles, and he drove every one of them in the silence of a man who was listening to something older than the words being spoken. James was 6 years old. Lagos. 1995. The rainy season. His mother, a dunny, drove a taxi she did not own. She rented it from a man named Chief, who charged her 40% of every fare and did not care whether she had passengers or not. The 40% was due at the end of every week. If she missed a payment, Chief gave the car to someone else. There was always someone else. Adunni drove nights because the daytime shifts were taken by men who had been driving longer and knew Chief longer and had the kind of relationship with Chief that involved handshakes and envelopes and a language of favors that Adunni did not speak and did not want to learn. The night shift was hers by default. It was what was left after the men had taken what they wanted. James rode with her. Not every night. Most nights. There was no one to leave him with. His father had gone to London when James was 2 and had not come back. Not a disappearance. A departure. The kind that comes with a promise to send for you, that arrives in letters that get shorter and then stop. Aduni did not explain. She did not have the time or the vocabulary for explanations that would make a 2-year-old understand why one of the two people in his world had subtracted himself from it. She put James in the back seat. There was no car seat. She folded a blanket into a rectangle and placed it on the seat and told him to lie down. She told him to sleep. He tried. The car smelled like petrol and the vinyl of the seats and the particular scent of Lagos at night, which is exhaust and rain and cooking smoke, and something underneath all of it that is not any of those things but is the city itself. He would lie on the blanket and feel the car move through the streets and hear his mother's voice negotiating fares. Victoria Island. How much? That is too much. I will take you for this. The back and forth that was not argument. It was commerce. The daily negotiation of a woman whose income depended on her ability to assign a value to a distance and defend that value to a stranger. Her hands on the wheel, he watched them from the back seat through the gap between the front seats. The left hand gripping the top of the steering wheel, the right hand reaching back to adjust the blanket when he shifted. The wheel was cracked in 2 places where the sun had dried the plastic. Her fingers knew the cracks. They found the smooth places between them without looking the way a musician finds the right fret without glancing down. There is a kind of poverty that does not announce itself with hunger. It announces itself with logistics. The question is never do we eat. The question is in what order do the problems get solved? Rent first or school fees? Petrol first or food? The mathematics of insufficient resources applied to a life that requires all of them. Aduni solved these equations every day with the efficiency of a woman who understood that hesitation was a luxury billed by the hour. One night, he woke up. The car was stopped. He could hear the rain on the roof, steady, the kind that does not pause. He looked through the gap between the seats. His mother's hands were still on the wheel. Her shoulders were shaking, not large shakes, small ones, the kind that come when a person is crying without sound, because sound would wake the child in the back seat, and the child in the back seat is the reason she is driving in the first place. She was not crying because she was sad. She was crying because she was tired. There is a difference. Sadness has a cause you can name. Tiredness at that depth does not come from a single source. It comes from the accumulation of every morning she woke before dawn, and every night she drove past midnight, and every fare she negotiated, and every payment she made to chief, and every meal she stretched, and every hour she did not sleep. The crying was not emotional. It was structural, the body reaching a load limit and releasing pressure the only way it could. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. She checked the rearview mirror. James closed his eyes. He did not close them because he was tired. He closed them because he was 6 years old, and he already understood that pretending to sleep was the only thing he could give his mother in that moment. The permission to be seen by no one, the permission to break in private. He never told her he saw. She never knew. It lived between them the way certain truths live between a parent and a child. Present, unspoken, load-bearing. Aduni never said they were poor. She said we are building. She said it the way you say something that is both a fact and an instruction. We are building. Not a description of the present. A demand placed on the future by a woman who refused to let the present be the final draft. Building. The word implied tools and material and a structure taking shape. It implied that what they had now was temporary, and what they would have later was being constructed in real time by the woman behind the wheel. James built. He built himself out of Lagos, and into a scholarship, and into a degree, and into a company, and into another company, and into a position where the numbers on his bank statement had enough zeros that the boy in the back of the taxi would not recognize them. He built until the building was so tall he could not see the parking lot from his office. That was the problem. From the 32nd floor of a glass tower in downtown Houston, a parking lot is a shape, a warehouse is a rectangle. A woman standing beside a dead car at 2 in the morning is invisible. The distance between the man he had become and the boy he had been was measured in floors. And somewhere between the 6th floor and the 30th, the view had changed enough that the things his mother would have seen from ground level no longer registered on his horizon. Until tonight. Until the parking lot. Until the halogen lights that looked like Lagos. until the woman in the back seat with the car seat beside her, and the numbers that did not add up, and the system that did not ask why. They arrived at Danielle's apartment complex at 2:51 the morning. James pulled into the lot and parked near the entrance. Building C, second floor. A concrete staircase with a metal railing that someone had painted dark green at some point in the last decade. The paint was peeling in strips near the bottom, where rain collected, and the metal underneath was the color of rust. The apartment door had 2 locks. The original deadbolt that came with the unit, and a second one. A chain lock, installed by someone who knew that the original was not sufficient and could not afford a better one. Danielle unlocked both and opened the door 3 inches. She looked inside. She did not enter. Through the 3-inch gap, James could see a nightlight. A small one, plugged into an outlet near the floor, casting a circle of warm orange light on the carpet. The kind of light you leave on for children who are afraid of the dark, or for children whose mother comes home at 3 inches in the morning and needs to check on them without turning on the overhead and waking them. The door to the adjacent apartment was slightly open. Gloria's apartment. The arrangement was physical as much as financial. The 2 apartments shared a wall. Gloria left her door unlocked on the nights Danielle worked, so the children could be moved between the 2 spaces without keys or knocking. The children slept at Gloria's on a sofa with a blanket that Danielle had bought from a thrift store on Westheimer. A brown blanket with a pattern of horses on it. Mira called it the horse blanket. It was the one thing the girl would not sleep without. Danielle stepped inside Gloria's door. She stood over the sofa and looked at them. Jalen on one end, Mira on the other. The horse blanket covering both of them pulled to Mira's chin and bunched at Jalen's waist because he always kicked it off in his sleep. She did not touch them. She stood there with the face of a person taking inventory of the only things that matter. She stepped back out. She closed Gloria's door gently. She looked at James. He was standing beside the SUV, 10 feet from the bottom of the stairs, not at the top, not near her door. At the bottom, the same distance, the same language spoken without words. She said thank you the way she had said it to Gloria on the phone, not as emotion, as transaction. The only currency available for a debt she could not otherwise repay. James reached into his pocket. He took out a card, not a business card, a personal one, white, simple. A name and a phone number. Nothing else. No company name, no title, no logo. He held it out. If you need anything, I mean it, anything. Danielle took the card. She did not look at it. She folded it once and put it in the front pocket of the uniform she would need to return within 48 hours. She had heard that sentence before. From the social worker at the VA, from the woman at the church pantry, from Marcus's commanding officer at the funeral, standing in dress uniform with a folded flag under his arm. And the particular sincerity of a man who means what he says and will forget he said it by Thursday. If you need anything, the sentence is offered frequently. It is redeemed almost never. Good night, she said, and she went inside. James stood at the bottom of the stairs for 11 seconds after the door closed. He did not count them. His body counted them. The way a body counts the seconds after a sound to determine if the silence that follows is safe or just waiting. He got back in the SUV. He placed his hands on the wheel. On the dashboard, his phone lit up. An email notification from the COO of Rayner Holdings. The subject line was truncated, but the sender's name was visible, and beneath it, in smaller text, the company name, Rayner Holdings. The same name that was printed on Danielle's uniform. The same name that was in the automated message on her phone. The same company that had terminated her employment 40 minutes ago, while she was still mopping its floors. James did not open the email. He pulled out of the parking lot. He drove home. The phone screen went dark. The name stayed. Marcus did not choose the trade. He inherited it the way some people inherit eye color. His father was an electrician in Houston. Not the kind who worked for a company with a logo on the truck. The kind who drove his own van and answered his own phone and showed up at houses where the wiring had been done wrong the first time by someone cheaper. His father's hands could read a circuit the way a doctor reads a pulse. Current, resistance, load. The language of electricity spoken through fingertips pressed against junction boxes and panel boards in basements that smelled like dust and copper. Marcus learned the language before he learned to drive. He was 12, the first time his father handed him a voltage tester and said, "Tell me what is wrong with this outlet." He held the tester against the terminals and felt the reading before he read the display. Dead. No current. The wire behind the wall had come loose from the breaker. His father did not praise him. He nodded. In the vocabulary of that household, a nod was the highest form of recognition available. Marcus enlisted at 22. Not out of patriotism, not out of ambition, out of arithmetic. The same arithmetic that sent men like him into uniform in every generation. He had a wife, he had a daughter on the way, he had a set of skills that paid when the phone rang, and did not pay when it did not. The Army offered health insurance that covered pregnancy. The civilian plan from his part-time contracting work did not. The math was simple. The math is always simple when the numbers are small enough. He deployed twice. Iraq. 18 months total. He came home both times. He came home intact. That was the word the discharge papers used. The word his mother used when she called the church to say Marcus was back. The word Danielle used when her coworkers asked how he was doing. Intact. As if a human body is a package and the only question worth asking is whether the seal is broken. Marcus was intact. His heart was not. The doctors found it 11 months after his second discharge. Cardiomyopathy. The left ventricle thickening in a way that restricted blood flow and reduced the heart's ability to pump efficiently. It could have been genetic. It could have been the burn pits. In Iraq, the military disposed of waste by burning it in open pits. Plastic, batteries, medical supplies, ammunition, human waste. The smoke carried particles that settled in lungs and livers and hearts and stayed there the way certain debts stay on a credit report. Present. Unresolved. Accumulating interest. The military said there was insufficient evidence to establish a service connection between the burn pits and his heart condition. The VA said the same thing in longer sentences across 7 letters spread over 2 years. Each letter began with the same phrase, "We regret to inform you." Each letter ended with the same instruction, "You may resubmit with additional documentation." Marcus resubmitted. 7 times. 7 claims. 7 versions of the same story told in the language the system required. Dates of service. Locations of deployment. Medical records from the field. Letters from civilian cardiologists explaining the correlation between toxic exposure and cardiac deterioration. Each submission was a stack of paper an inch thick. Each response was a single page, claim status. Pending review. The system was not designed to deny him, it was designed to wait, and waiting, when applied to a man whose heart was failing, produces the same result as denial. It just takes longer. There are 2 ways a system fails a person. It can push them out, or it can hold them in place and let the clock do the rest. Marcus needed surgery. The civilian insurance from his warehouse job classified the procedure as elective. The VA classified his case as under review. He existed in the space between 2 systems, both of which acknowledged his condition and neither of which would pay to fix it. He was covered. He was also uncovered. Both things were true at the same time on the same paperwork. He died on a Sunday, October. The children were napping in the bedroom. Danielle was working a morning shift at the retail store on Westheimer. Marcus was on the sofa. The game was on. Houston against Jacksonville. His heart stopped between the second and third quarter. It did not announce itself with pain or collapse or any of the dramatic signals that television has trained people to expect. It simply stopped, the way a clock stops. Not because the mechanism broke, because the battery ran out. Jalen was 4 years old. He walked into the living room and found his father on the sofa with his eyes closed and the television still on. He said "Daddy" 3 times. Then he picked up the phone from the coffee table and pressed the numbers he had been taught to press. 911. The operator asked him what was wrong. He said, "My daddy will not wake up." He said it clearly, in the precise diction of a child who has been taught to speak to adults in complete sentences, 4 years old. Standing in a living room in Houston with a phone in his hand and his father on the sofa and the game still playing, and the particular quality of light that comes through windows on a Sunday afternoon in October when the season is turning, and the shadows are longer than they were a month ago. When Danielle arrived, the ambulance had already left. Gloria was sitting on the front steps with both children in her lap. Mira was asleep against her chest. Jalen was not asleep. He was sitting very still with the phone still in his hand. He had not put it down. He was holding it the way you hold something that has just done the most important thing it will ever do. On the refrigerator inside the apartment, held in place by a magnet from a pizza restaurant that had closed 2 years ago, was a letter from the VA. The most recent one. Claim status, pending review. It had been there for 5 months. Next to it was a drawing in crayon. Jalen had made it, a picture of his family. 4 stick figures, mommy with curly hair, daddy with big hands, Jalen and Mira in between. A yellow star on each of their shirts. The letter is still on the refrigerator. 14 months later, Danielle has not removed it. Not because she forgot, because removing it would mean the system had finished with her family. And the system had not finished. It had simply moved on. The letter remains. The claim remains. Addressed to a man who no longer has a heartbeat. Pending review. Pending review. Pending. James did not sleep that night. He had not slept the night before either. But this was a different kind of wakefulness. The first night was the insomnia he had lived with for years. The restlessness that drove him into his car and onto empty roads at 1 inch the morning. This was not that. This was the wakefulness of a man whose mind had caught something and would not release it. He arrived at the office at 6:40 inches the morning. The building was quiet. The security guard at the front desk nodded. The elevator carried him to the 32nd floor in 11 seconds. He walked through the empty hallway to his office. Glass walls on 3 sides. The Houston skyline visible through the east-facing window. The sun just clearing the low buildings on the horizon, casting the kind of light that makes a city look clean from a sufficient distance. He opened his laptop. He had 412 unread emails. He did not start at the top. He searched for a name. Rayner Distribution. The Logistics Division. One of 14 divisions under the Rayner Holdings umbrella. He found the monthly HR summary report. It had been sent 3 days ago. He had never opened one before. Not this quarter. Not last quarter. Not in the 2 years since the logistics division had been acquired and folded into the holding company's portfolio. He opened it now. The report was 47 pages long. Financial summaries, headcount, turnover rates, compliance metrics. He scrolled past the graphs, past the retention numbers, past the cost per hire analysis. He found the section on page 31, Automated Terminations, Q3. It was a spreadsheet embedded in the PDF. Rows and columns, employee ID, name, site location, date of termination, reason code. 340 rows, 340 names, each one formatted identically, each one generated by the same software that had sent the message to Danielle's phone. 340 people. In 1 quarter, from 1 division, he scrolled through the names. They were alphabetical. He did not know what he was looking for until he found it. Line 247, the name, the date, October 14, yesterday, the reason code, attendance threshold exceeded, automated. He looked at the screen, then he looked at his hands on the keyboard, then he looked at the screen again. The understanding arrived the way cold arrives, not all at once, in stages. First the surface, then deeper, then the bones. Line 247 was the woman in his car last night. The woman with the car seat in the back. The woman whose children were sleeping on a neighbor's sofa because the system he owned did not ask why she was late. He sat with that knowledge for a long time. He did not stand. He did not call anyone. He read the line again. Employee ID 7734. Terminated. Automated. The word automated appeared 340 times in the spreadsheet, once for each person. Each time it meant the same thing. No human being reviewed this decision. No human being made a phone call. No human being asked a question. The system does not ask why you are late. It asks how many times. He heard it in her voice. The way she had said it in the back of his car at 2:20 inches the morning while sitting next to a car seat that belonged to children she had not seen in 16 hours. He heard it, and he looked at the spreadsheet, and the 2 things met in the center of his chest like 2 wires touching. A connection completed. A circuit closed. 340 names. 340 terminations. 340 messages sent to 340 phones. How many of those phones were sitting on the thighs of women still wearing the company uniform when the message arrived? How many of those women were sitting in parking lots with dead batteries and no ride home? How many of them had children sleeping on neighbors' sofas? He did not know. The report did not say. The system did not collect that information. The system collected timestamps and badge scans and threshold counts. It did not collect context. Context was not a field in the software. Context was not a metric. Context was the thing that existed between the numbers, and the numbers had been designed to operate without it. James closed the laptop. He picked up his keys. He walked out of the office, past the glass walls, past the empty hallway, past the security guard who nodded again. He got in his car. He drove south. The parking lot at the Rayner Fulfillment Center looked different in daylight. That was the first thing he noticed. At 2 inches the morning it had been a landscape of halogen light and shadow, shapes without detail, the anonymity that darkness provides to all surfaces. In daylight it was concrete and painted lines, and a dumpster near the loading dock and cigarette butts near the side entrance, and the particular aesthetic of a building that had been designed for function and had never once been asked to be anything else. He parked in the same spot he had parked in the night before. He sat in the car for a moment and looked at the space where Danielle's sedan had been. It was empty now. Someone else's car was in the row behind it. The lot was a third full. Day shift. He got out and walked to the side entrance. The door Danielle had walked out of 12 hours ago. He pulled it open and stepped inside. The hallway smelled like floor cleaner and cardboard, fluorescent lights. A bulletin board on the wall near the time clock with a collage of notices and flyers. Safety reminders. A sign-up sheet for the company holiday party that had already passed. A printed notice in bold type. Attendance policy reminder. 3 tardies in 30 days equals a written warning. 5 equals termination. No exceptions. No exceptions. That is the language of a system that has decided efficiency is more important than inquiry. A system that has replaced the question, what is happening in this person's life, with the question, how many times? Next to the printed notice, pinned to the board with a red thumbtack, was a crayon drawing. A child's drawing. A woman with curly brown hair and a wide smile. She was wearing what appeared to be a uniform, a gray shirt. On the shirt, drawn in yellow crayon, with the heavy pressure of a small hand concentrating very hard, was a star. The woman was standing inside a rectangle that might have been a building, or might have been a box, or might have been the child's idea of what a warehouse looks like when you have never been inside one, but you know your mother goes there every night. The drawing and the policy notice occupied the same bulletin board. They were 4 inches apart. One was the language of the system. The other was the language of the person inside it. Neither one acknowledged the existence of the other. James stood in front of that bulletin board for a long time. He did not take a photograph. He did not remove the notice. He read it again. No exceptions. Then he looked at the drawing again. The yellow star, the smile, the curly hair. He stood there the way a man stands when he is seeing something he has owned for years for the first time. He walked through the warehouse. He did not identify himself. He wore no badge. He looked like a man in business clothes who had wandered into the wrong building, which in a way he had. He watched the workers on the floor, scanning packages, loading pallets, moving through the choreography of a shift with the practiced efficiency of people who know exactly how much time they have and exactly how much they are expected to produce within it. He stopped near the break room. A woman was sitting at a folding table eating a sandwich. She was in her 40s. She looked tired. Not the tiredness of one bad night, the tiredness that becomes a texture. He asked her, the way a stranger asks a question in a break room, how the job was. She looked at him with the specific caution of someone who does not know if the person asking is management or not. Then she decided he was not. "It is fine," she said. "If you do not have kids," he asked what she meant. She told him. "Daycare runs $1,400 a month for 2. Her check is $1,900. The schedule rotates every 2 weeks. The software assigns shifts. You cannot request the same days. You cannot swap without manager approval. And the manager is also on a rotating schedule, so the approval takes 2 days. And by the time it arrives, the shift has passed, and the absence is logged, and the absence counts. A man at the next table overheard. He said he slept in his car between shifts. 2 hours in the parking lot, because the drive home was 40 minutes each way, and the gas was $8, he could not justify spending twice in one day. He had been doing it for 11 months. He kept a pillow behind the driver's seat. A young woman near the vending machine said she had dropped out of community college. She was 22. She had been taking classes in the morning and working the afternoon shift. Then the scheduling software rotated her to mornings, and she asked for an exception, and was told the system does not accommodate individual scheduling requests. No exceptions. James listened. He did not ask their names. He did not tell them his. He stood in the break room of a building he owned and listened to the people who worked inside it describe the architecture of a system he had built and never visited. He had approved the acquisition of this division. He had signed off on the efficiency metrics. He had seen the cost savings projections. He had never stood in this room. The distance between the 32nd floor and the break room floor was not measured in stories. It was measured in questions never asked. He drove back to the office. He sat in the car in the parking garage for 7 minutes. Then he pulled out his phone and called Lagos. It was 1:14 inches the morning in Lagos when the phone rang. Aduni answered on the second ring. She had always been a light sleeper. The taxi years had trained her body to surface at the slightest interruption, and the training had never left. 30 years after the last night shift, she still woke at sounds the way veterans still flinch at doors. The body keeps its schedules, even when the schedule is no longer required. James. Her voice was not concerned. It was alert. The voice of a woman who knows that her son does not call at this hour, unless the call needs to happen at this hour. He told her about the parking lot, about the woman, about the car that would not start, and the car seat in the back, and the 2 children sleeping on a neighbor's sofa. He told her about the termination message, about the automated system, about the 340 names on a spreadsheet he had never read. He told her about the break room, about the woman with the sandwich, and the man with the pillow, and the girl who dropped out of school. He told it the way Danielle had told her story in the back of his car. Not in order, in the pieces that surfaced first. Aduni listened. She did not interrupt. When he finished, the phone line was quiet for a long time. Not the quiet of disconnection. The quiet of a woman assembling something behind her eyes. Then she said 4 words. "You are describing me." She said it without drama, without accusation. The way a person states a fact that has been true for a long time and is only now being spoken aloud because someone has finally created the conditions for it to be heard. "You are describing me," she said again. The woman with 2 children and no sleep and a job that does not care why she is tired, that was me. Every night in that taxi. You were in the back seat. You know what it looked like from there. James did not speak. The difference between me and that woman is not character, it is geography. And 1 phone call. She paused. James could hear the sounds of Lagos through the phone. Distant. A motorcycle. A dog. The particular texture of a city at night, in a country where night does not mean quiet. Aduni asked the question she had been building toward since the moment she answered the phone. She asked it the way she did everything. Directly, without cushion. What are you going to do with what you know now? James looked out the window of his office. The 32nd floor. The city spread out below him in the early evening light. The freeways. The rooftops. The parking lots. From this height, a parking lot is a shape. A warehouse is a square. A woman standing beside a dead car at 2 inches the morning is invisible. He had built this height. He had built it with the money his mother's driving had made possible, with the scholarship her sacrifice had funded, with the company his ambition had grown. He had built it so high that the ground his mother had walked on was no longer visible from his office. He had not forgotten where he came from. That was not the problem. The problem was that remembering where you came from and seeing what is happening at that level are not the same thing. Memory is a photograph. It stays fixed. The ground keeps moving. Mama, I built something that is doing to other people what the world did to you. And I did not know because I stopped looking from the parking lot. I started looking from the 32nd floor. And from the 32nd floor, you cannot see who is standing next to a dead car at 2 inches the morning. Aduni was quiet. Then she said, "Now you know. That is the only part that matters. What happened before you knew is not yours to carry. What happens after you know is." She said good night. She hung up. She did not say "I love you." She did not say "I am proud of you." She said the thing that needed to be said, and she said it the way she had always said things. With the efficiency of a woman who understood that words, like petrol, should not be wasted. The conference room on the 32nd floor had a glass table that seated 14. James sat at the head of it the next morning at 8:15. Across from him sat the division head of Rayner Distribution and the VP of Human Resources. They had been told the meeting was urgent. They had not been told what it was about. James placed the HR report on the table. He opened it to page 31. The spreadsheet. 340 names. How many of these people have children? The division head looked at the VP. The VP looked at the report. Neither of them answered. Not because they did not want to. Because they did not know. The system did not track that data. The system tracked badge scans and timestamps and attendance thresholds. It did not track car seats. It did not track who was sleeping on whose sofa. It did not track the distance between a paycheck and a daycare bill. The system does not ask why. James said it quietly, not with anger, with the particular weight of a man who has heard a sentence for the first time in the back of his car and is now hearing it for the second time in his own voice in his own conference room. The repetition was not for emphasis. It was for accuracy. This is not about who did something wrong. This is about what we built that makes this the default. We built a machine that counts how many times a person is late and fires them without asking a single question about why. That is not an HR policy. That is an algorithm with consequences. And the consequences are sitting in parking lots at 2 inches the morning with dead batteries and no ride home and children sleeping on sofas that do not belong to them. He did not raise his voice. He did not slam the report on the table. He spoke the way his mother spoke. Clear, measured. The voice of someone who has already done the math and is now presenting the results. 3 things. Effective immediately. First, the automated termination system stops. Every termination goes through a human review. A person, not a software, makes the call. Second, child care stipend. $400 a month for every employee with children under 6 who earns below the median wage. Not a daycare center. Not a program. Cash. Directly applied to their paycheck. Third, an advisory board. Not executives, not managers, employees, floor-level workers, the people who live inside these policies. They sit at a table and they tell us what is broken. And we listen. The division heads started to respond. Something about budgets, something about precedent, something about the language of a system that had been optimized for efficiency and did not have a line item for listening. James raised one hand. Not a command. A pause. I need someone on that advisory board who knows what it is like inside this building at 2 inches the morning. I need someone who can tell us what we cannot see from this floor. I have someone in mind. He picked up his phone. He found the number. It rang 4 times. Danielle almost did not answer. She was sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open, scrolling through job listings on a screen with a crack in the lower right corner that she had learned to look past the way you learn to look past any imperfection that you cannot afford to fix. She was calculating rent. She was calculating groceries. She was calculating the distance between what she had in her account and what the first of the month would demand, and the distance was not a gap. It was a cliff. The phone rang. Unknown number. She let it ring 3 times. Unknown numbers at this hour were usually automated. Debt collectors, survey callers, systems reaching out to extract something from her that she did not have. She answered on the 4th ring because something in her, some calculation beneath the conscious one, decided that the cost of not answering was higher than the cost of answering. That is how a person who has been living at the margin makes decisions. Not by weighing options. By weighing consequences. Hello. This is James. From the parking lot. The name landed before the context. James. Then the parking lot. Then the car. Then the halogen lights, and the dead battery, and the back seat, and the car seat, and the drive home, and the 10 feet at the bottom of the stairs. It assembled in sequence the way a memory assembles when it has only been 12 hours old and has not yet decided where to live permanently. She did not speak. She waited. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear the whole thing before you respond." She waited. "My full name is James Okoro. I am the majority shareholder and chairman of Rayner Holdings. Rayner Distribution, the company that employed you, is a subsidiary of my company. The system that terminated your employment is a system that operates under policies I approved. I did not know your name last night. I did not know the connection until this morning when I read a report I have never read before. I am not calling to apologize. An apology changes nothing in your bank account." The silence that followed was not the silence of shock. It was the silence of a person recalculating every interaction from the night before through a new filter. The man in the parking lot. The man who stood 10 feet away. The man who adjusted the rearview mirror so he would not see her face. The man who drove her home and stood at the bottom of the stairs and said, "If you need anything." That man owned the building she had just been mopping. That man's name was on the uniform she was supposed to return within 48 hours. Did you know? Last night. In the car. Did you already know? No. I found out this morning. She believed him. Not because she trusted him, because the lie would have served no purpose. A man who owned the company did not need to sit in a parking lot at 2 inches the morning to gather information about a night shift worker. The encounter had been accidental. The discovery had come later. She could trace the logic, and the logic held. But believing him did not remove the anger. It redirected it. The anger moved from the man on the phone to the space behind him, the conference rooms, the software, the policy documents, the no exceptions printed on a bulletin board next to her son's drawing. James continued, "The same system that sent you a text at 2 inches the morning sent me a report this morning. 340 names. You were line 247. I read all 340. And I do not know how many of them have children. I do not know how many of them were standing in parking lots when they received the message. The system does not collect that information. That is the problem I am calling about. I am not offering you your old job. I am offering you a different one. I am building an advisory board. Employees from the floor level. People who know what is broken inside the building because they have been living inside the broken part. I want you on it." Danielle did not respond immediately. She looked at the laptop screen, the job listings, the crack in the corner, the numbers in her bank account. She looked at the refrigerator, the VA letter, pending review, the crayon drawing, the yellow star. "You want me to tell you what is wrong with your company. I want you to tell me what is wrong with the policies I signed that I have never seen from the inside." Danielle was quiet for 12 seconds. Then she said the only thing that was honest. "I need to think about it." "Good," James said. "That is the right answer." He did not push. He gave her his direct number. Not the office line. The personal one. The same number on the card he had given her 12 hours ago that was still in the pocket of the uniform she was supposed to return. She hung up. She sat at the table. She looked at the phone. She looked at the crayon drawing on the refrigerator. She did not decide that day. 2 weeks later, Danielle walked into the Rayner Holdings headquarters on the 32nd floor. She was wearing a blouse she had borrowed from Gloria. Navy blue, one size too large, ironed that morning on a towel spread across the kitchen counter because she did not own an ironing board. She carried a folder, brown, cardboard, the kind you buy in a 3-pack from the dollar store. Inside the folder were 11 pages, handwritten, some on the backs of pay stubs, some on the margins of grocery lists, some on the blank side of Jalen's school notices. She had been writing them for 14 months, not because anyone asked, because when you live inside a broken system long enough, you start keeping a list of the fractures, not to file a complaint, not to build a case, because the act of naming what is wrong is the only form of control available to a person who cannot fix it. 11 policies, ranked by impact, written in the handwriting of a woman who had composed them during 15-minute breaks in a warehouse break room, sitting at a folding table with a borrowed pen, between bites of a sandwich she had packed at 5:30 that morning. She had always known what was broken. She had never had anyone ask. She sat at the glass table, 14 chairs, She sat in the third one on the left. Not the head, not the foot. The spot a person chooses when they are present, but not yet sure of their welcome. James sat at the far end. Not the head of the table. The last chair. He had a notepad. He had a pen. He did not speak first. Danielle opened the folder. She began with policy number 1. Automated termination. She spoke clearly. She spoke the way a person speaks when they have rehearsed something not in front of a mirror but in front of a refrigerator at 3 inches the morning while 2 children sleep in the next room. James listened. He wrote. He did not interrupt. He did not nod in the performative way that executives nod when they want to signal agreement without committing to action. He wrote the way a student writes when the teacher is saying something that will be on the test. He had stopped looking at the company from the 32nd floor. He had not started looking from the ground, but he had started looking from the parking lot. That was somewhere. 3 weeks after the first advisory board meeting, James sent a package to Lagos. No letter, no card. Inside the box was a car seat. New, gray fabric, plastic frame, the same model Danielle carried in the back of her car. Adunni opened it in her living room. She stood over it and looked at it for a long time. She did not call James to say thank you. She called him to say she had given it away. A woman down the street. She drove a motorcycle taxi at night. Her daughter rode on the back, holding onto her waist. No seat, no strap, no protection. Just a child gripping a mother's body and trusting that the grip was enough. Adunni gave her the car seat. The woman did not know where it came from. She did not know that it had traveled from a factory in Ohio to a warehouse in Houston, to an office on the 32nd floor, to a box shipped to Lagos, to a living room in Surulere, to the back of a motorcycle on a street where the street light had been out for 2 years. She only knew that her daughter could now ride without holding on so tight. The circle closed. Not perfectly. Not completely. Circles in real life do not close the way they do in stories. They come close and leave a gap, and the gap is where the next story begins. Gloria refused the money. Danielle left the envelope on her kitchen table on a Wednesday morning. White envelope, no name on the outside. Gloria opened it after Danielle left. Inside was not cash. It was a letter. 1 page. Handwritten. You kept my children alive. I will never be able to pay for that. But I can start by making sure you know I know. Gloria folded the letter and put it in the drawer next to her bed. The drawer where she kept her mother's rosary and the obituary from her son's funeral and the things that were too important to display and too important to discard. The letter lived there now, evidence of a debt acknowledged by the person who owed it. That is not the same as the debt being paid, but it is the first step toward the balance shifting. Jalen drew a new picture. He drew it at school during free time on a Friday afternoon, with a green crayon and a yellow crayon and the particular concentration of a 5-year-old who is making something important and knows it is important even if he cannot explain why. The picture showed his mother sitting at a table. Not the kitchen table, a different table, a long one, with other people around it. His mother was in a chair and she was smiling, and on her shirt was a yellow star. The same yellow star he put on every drawing of her. The star was not a badge. It was not a symbol of anything he could articulate. It was the way a child marks the most important person in the frame. You put a star on them so everyone knows. Danielle brought the picture home. She stood in front of the refrigerator. The VA letter was still there. Claim status. Pending review. It had been there for 15 months. She looked at it. She looked at the drawing. She reached up and removed the letter. She folded it once. She put it in the kitchen drawer. She did not throw it away. She moved it to a place where it did not have to be seen every time she opened the refrigerator to pour milk for breakfast. She taped the drawing in its place. Jalen's mother at a table with a yellow star on her shirt. The magnet from the closed pizza restaurant held the top corner. The drawing covered the faint rectangle of slightly lighter paint where the VA letter had been for 15 months. The rectangle where a system's answer had lived, replaced now by a child's answer, which was not an answer at all. It was a picture of the way things looked from where he was sitting. Nobody in this story was fixed. Danielle still woke at 5:50 every morning. She still calculated rent against groceries, against gas, against the relentless arithmetic of a life that operated without margin. The advisory board, paid a stipend, not a salary. The childcare benefit covered part of what she owed. Not all. She was not rescued, she was repositioned. The ground beneath her had shifted just enough that the next step was not a cliff. James still did not sleep. He still drove at night, but the routes had changed. He drove through the warehouse district now, not every night, enough nights. He watched the parking lots at shift change. He watched the women walking to their cars at 2 inches the morning. He did not stop. He did not get out. He watched from the distance of a man who was learning that the view from the parking lot contained information that the view from the 32nd floor did not. Gloria still watched the children. She still did not charge for it, but the arrangement had changed. Danielle came home earlier now. Not every night, but enough nights that Gloria could go to bed before midnight. Enough nights that the sofa with the horse blanket was sometimes empty when morning came. Enough nights. This story is fiction. But the childcare crisis is not. In the United States, the average cost of childcare for 2 children exceeds $12,000 a year. In most states, that is more than the annual tuition at a public university. Roughly 2 million women have left the workforce or reduced their hours because they cannot find or afford childcare. That is not a personal failure. It is a structural one. More than 300,000 veterans are currently waiting for their VA disability claims to be processed. The average wait time exceeds 4 months. For some, it is years. The system is not designed to deny them. It is designed to wait. And for some of them, the waiting is the denial. The way we talk about single mothers, particularly single mothers of color, is often missing a layer. The layer of systems. The layer of policies written in conference rooms they were never invited into. The layer of software that counts how many times they are late without ever asking why. Not every firing is a failure of character. Sometimes it is a design flaw in a machine that no one on the 30th floor has looked at from the parking lot. I wrote this story because I believe corporate policies are not neutral. They are choices, and choices can be changed. If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who makes those choices. Subscribe for more stories. See you in the next.